For perspective on the promises and results of the session, we go to our roundtable. We're joined by Ross Ramsey, the executive editor of the Texas Tribune, and James Barrágan, the state government reporter for the Dallas Morning News. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
So we've heard Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick call this the Super Bowl of all sessions. Does it really live up to that?
It's always the Super Bowl of all sessions at this point in a legislative session. You know, they got to the end, they finished in regulation time, they got done. It appears the big things that they wanted to get done. And so, you know, what they're feeling is relief.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it also is good to point out that they are telling us that these things got done, that they got property taxes and school finance and the budget done, but there are still a lot of the details of it that we do not know. So at this point, we have to take their word for it, and over the next couple of days, I'm sure we'll sort of figure it out and actually be able to do a thorough job of vetting whether they actually got done and how much success they actually had. But sure, right now it's all the Super Bowl win.
Right.
Was there anything that surprised you this session? I mean, like you just kind of alluded to, the continuing unity that we've seen from the leadership?
They did a remarkably good job, to your point, of keeping the lid on the things that usually make them mad. You know, they had a little spits and spurts here and there. You know, there was big debate on this bill, some big debate on that bill. But for the most part, we didn't have some overriding nastiness or ugly conversation going on. You know, the main thing was the school finance, property taxes, and then the secondary items were school safety and Hurricane Harvey. We didn't spend 5 months on bathrooms.
And that's something that they talked about at the beginning of the session. They wanted to focus their attention on bread and butter issues. If you remember at this point, last session, people were still fighting about sanctuary cities.
Right.
We were still debating whether we were going to have a special session because of the bathroom bill. And those two issues were very, very divisive. And what ended up happening was that people were cutting each other up in each chamber, especially in the House. And then they were also cutting each other up between the chamber leaders. You remember Governor Patrick and Speaker Strauss were going at it. At this point now, everybody seems to be on the same team. I'm sure there are some differences behind the scenes that we are not privy to, but it does look like they are presenting a strong front together, and that there haven't been any big fights, even on issues like abortion. You know, we have had the big Born Alive bill, the Planned Parenthood bill, but there's been some minimal debate, and there's been some agreement of, okay, let's get this over with and get back to the things that we're focused on.
Anything surprised you that didn't make it to the finish line?
You know, there's always something, and you know, I immediately went blank when you asked me that. But you know, they filed more bills this session than they've filed in any of the last 5 sessions. They filed like 7,300 pieces of proposed legislation. I think they're going to pass something like 1 in 6, 1 in 5. You know, this was mostly, sessions are always this way to some extent, but these are, this was a session where most of the things that they proposed died. I thought they would actually decriminalize marijuana. They didn't do that. I didn't think they would expand marijuana, medical marijuana, and they did. So, there's always some winners and some losers as you go.
I was on the opposite end of Ross, actually. I thought they were going to decriminalize pot or at some point, or I thought they were going to do something with medical marijuana and not do the decriminalization.
So you win, right?
Yeah, the decriminalization is lingering, as Ross has wisely pointed out in his columns. No law is ever really dead until the end, but it looks like that is not going to happen, despite a big push from Speaker Pro Tem Moody and some support and wide support from the House.
And one of Governor Abbott's big priority items almost died earlier this week in the House when the bill to create a mental health consortium got shot down on a point of order. You were there when lawmakers were really having this dramatic moment to try to bring it back. Kind of walk me through that, and what do you think?
So the main player in this is Representative Jonathan Stickland of Bedford. He's a Republican. He's a Tea Party, small government kind of guy. He had some concerns about what he called parental rights, and he didn't really elaborate that to us what he meant by that, but he and his constituents and his supporters had said there's a big issue here. So he killed this on a procedural move called a point of order on the last night for them to file these, to pass Senate bills. He killed it at around 7 p.m. And then there was this big scramble behind the scenes to try to figure out a way to get it back, because it was a big priority for the governor, and it was a big priority to basically everybody in the legislature not named Jonathan Stickland. At around 11 p.m., which is 1 hour before the deadline, literally the 11th hour, they bring back SB 11, which had already passed to third reading, which is another mental health bill, so it has something to do with the Mental Health Consortium. They tack on the other bill, SB 10, as an amendment, and that leads to this big disruption, this big blow-up between Stickland and Speaker Bonin, between Stickland and the author of the bill, John Zerwas. in the end, after a lot of debate, a lot of heated argument, the Mental Health Consortium is back in. They got it passed and they got it done, but it was a heated debate.
Yeah, if you were asleep, you woke up at the end and they said, "Did it go?" Yeah, they passed it. But there was a lot while you were asleep.
Yeah.
Lots of reporters changing their stories at the end of the night there.
And this was an important piece of legislation for many people because it does a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the last 2 years since the last legislative session that the state really needed to overhaul.
And because it came after the Santa Fe shootings, the governor held those big roundtables about what can we do to prevent more school shootings. This was the one big thing that everybody agreed on they could do to sort of try to prevent these kinds of future events. And that's why it was such a big priority. It was like the main vehicle for them to say, hey, here's what we did after those shootings. And so it was important for them to get it back.
So now that the session's almost over and maybe we won't have a special session, at least anytime soon, a lot of these lawmakers are going to go straight into re-election mode.
Right.
How do you think that this session is going to affect that, everything that's happened?
Well, you know, I was hearing a lot about, you guys probably were too, at the beginning of the session after the elections, a lot of members were privately saying, you know, we want to do what we can not to look like the people in Washington, to look ineffective. And, you know, they wanted to go home. That's why they had all the bread and butter talk. It was always meat and potatoes, bread and butter.
Right.
Talking about dinner the whole time. And the idea was, let's look like we're got our shoulder to the wheel and turning in a good work product. And they can go home and claim that. They don't have to go home and defend something crazy. And there were some things in there that are, you know, crowd pleasers. Red light cameras passed. Craft beer to go passed. You can take a case of beer out when you go to a craft beer place. There's some populist stuff in there, but mostly they can say they did the work of the state and, you know, keep us in there. We're doing a good job. That'll be the pitch.
I think especially for Republican lawmakers, this is going to be important to them on issues like abortion and issues like women's health, where they really moderated. You don't see us having such stiff laws like they passed in Alabama and Missouri and other places on abortion. And then on the other side, you've got people focusing on the maternal mortality problem that we have here in Texas, ways to address that, coming up with plans to do it. And for one of our legislators, Victoria Neave, she passed a rape kit backlog bill, which the governor supported, which Speaker Bonin supported. It was HB 8, a low priority bill. Yesterday, they bumped it to the top of the calendar. I think that shows you how important that was, and that's going to be an important part of their messaging to say, look, we worked with Democrats on these things. We didn't do crazy things, and we tried to play with the other side and get a good result for the people of Texas.
In an election that's going to have Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, looking serious might be an advantage.
Well, we will see. I hope you enjoyed the last few days of the session.
Enjoy is a fun word.
Yes. Thanks, guys.